I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sean Brodrick, natural resource specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, energyandresourcesdigest.com. Happy New Year, Sean, and welcome back to the show.
Happy New Year to you, too.
Natural gas prices, a 10% drop in one day. What's going on there?
That was just teeth-rattling. The drop we saw in natural gas was humongous, and it's all based on a weather report. This shows you how much hot air actually goes into these markets, right? And then when, something comes out, everything goes whoosh. I think traders, like those robotic traders and the programs, I think they have something to do with this too, because the actual trades that used to take place over 3 days or a week, they're all jammed into one day now. And so everybody ran out of natural gas like it was a house on fire, fell down 10%. The natural gas sensitive stocks got hammered, I know, because I own one of them. And yet I have to wonder if we're closer to the bottom than really not in this move, simply because of what's going on in the natural gas markets. Now, we are supposed to see higher natural gas production in 2017, but natural gas exports are ramping up. I mean, huge, just shipping it out all over the place, new facilities being built, and at the same time, 47% of new power plants in the U.S. that are being built are natural gas. And there's a whole bunch of solar ones being built as well. There's almost no coal power plants being built. I mean, the rest is like nuclear and stuff like that. So natural gas, there's more and more demand, at least in the U.S., all the time. And we know there's more down in Mexico because exports to Mexico jumped like 79% year over year. It was crazy. So we're seeing all this demand around Latin America, South America, stuff like that. In fact, when you talk about liquefied natural gas, many people think that our big export market for that is Europe. It is not. It is Latin America. That's where most of it goes. I actually think this will actually adjust over 2017, and we'll see more sales to Asia because that's where the marginal growth is. But still, I mean, just tremendous demand for it. So I think that, some people got a case of the shakes because we had one winter report saying the Arctic, winter that is gripping most of North America is going to be gone in the next week. And maybe they're right. But the thing about weather reports is they have a degree of inaccuracy. You just don't know. So I think selling at this point. I mean, if you sold in the first few minutes, or it was like maybe an hour when things weren't so bad, that was fine. But now do you want to sell? I don't think so, because we could be closer to the bottom than not.
The flow of money. China's brought in new export of money permits and regulations. They're also changing their foreign exchange rules to make them tougher. Do you think China can really keep a lid on the money fleeing the country?
I know they're certainly trying. One other thing they did, and many people may not know this, they've also tightened the rules on how much gold can be imported by the big banks and trading houses. They're taking longer to give out the permits. So we'll have to see what happens in China when their big holiday season comes up. But it seems like they're doing absolutely everything they can to stop money from fleeing the country. And I think there's an actual solution, but it's not a solution anybody wants to talk about. and that's to let their currency free float. Because if it free floats, it will drop probably quite a bit, maybe 10%, maybe more, down to a level that it should actually be at. But then the fear will be over, right? I mean, they'll have already had the catastrophe. There'll be no point in, like, fleeing the country with your money at that point because, you know, it's like free floating and stuff. And China does have a lot of things going for it. Sure, it has huge debts, a massive debt bubble, and it has some other problems as well. But it still is a growth engine of the world, and so I'm not sure what they're going to do. I do know that these marginal things that the government keeps doing is just scaring the bejesus out of investors because they never know what the rules will be from 1 month to the next. And the changes come overnight. It's not like they say, okay, next month we're going to do this. No, it's like, bang, there you go. That's your new rule. Who wouldn't be nervous under that kind of situation? You'd be terrified. Of course you want to get your money out. So I think what they'll have to do is they'll free float the currency, knock things down. Of course, that'll upset people around the world, but get the pain over with. And then, you know, actually loosen up the currency laws and say, okay, you want to take money now that it's down 10, 15%? Go ahead, but you're a fool. And so I think that's what they're probably going to have to do, but we'll have to see how that plays out because that's a fascinating thing going on. Actually, China is one of the things I had a list that I made in a report I did of like things that could go terribly wrong this year. China is one of them. It's a massive financial ecosystem that doesn't report the truth. And so the chance of something going wrong there is higher than it might be somewhere else. I don't want anything to go wrong, but you have to admit that there is the possibility that something really bad could happen over there. So keep your eyes on China. And I don't blame anybody in China for getting their money out now. I just think that the Chinese government hasn't actually come to the solutions that will work yet.
When you said the Chinese government doesn't tell the truth, I thought the best example was the U.S. Navy claimed that China had stolen one of their undersea drones. China said that is completely inaccurate. We never did it. And then the next day they returned the drone.
I know. Yeah, well, and it should be interesting seeing this year in 2017 because President-elect Trump, seems to want to take a stronger position with the Chinese, and he seems to want to do it through Twitter. In fact, he just did this on Tuesday. He made one announcement about North Korea and their long-range missile program, which scares people if the North Koreans could actually build something that would hit something. That's yet another matter. And he also then sent a tweet about China, saying they take all this money from us and they aren't helping out with North Korea. Well, that's not really the way to get someone to help you out in that situation. I hope he realizes that, and he was just angry and sending things through Twitter, and he'll actually send actual diplomats to actually deal with China. However, the person that he has in charge, that he will put in charge of trade negotiations, is a staunch anti-China person like he is. So that again raises the risk of people not cooperating at all. I'm not saying that there'll be a physical conflict between the U.S. and China, but the chance of having kind of a Cold War, or I should say cold economic war situation between the two. And don't think that the U.S. automatically wins that one. Yes, China gets a heck of a lot of our money, but we've come to depend on them. There are things we don't make anymore that are only made in China. So that could really upset the apple cart in many kinds of ways. So we'll have to see what happens there. But, what is Trump going to do with China? I think that's one of the things people have to worry about this year.
Right. And as you said, he wants his trade representative, I think it's Charles Lighthizer, who was in the Reagan administration. Right. He was in the Reagan administration. And I didn't think President Reagan was all that keen on China either.
Well, you don't have to be keen on China. If he wants to take a stronger, more firm stance with China, I'm all for that. The thing is, you can't do political negotiations through Twitter. Anybody who's looking at the reality of the situation would tell you that is not the right approach to take. So he needs to get things behind the scenes and do things in a boardroom and not on Twitter. That seems to be the obvious solution there.
Do you think his advisors will eventually take his Twitter away?
I don't think they can. You know, some of his advisors seems like he's screwing up a pirate ship, frankly. But I do like some of the people that he's putting in. I think Rick Perry will make an excellent Secretary of Energy. He did some great things in Texas, and so I'm actually looking forward to that. I think that'll be good for energy production. It might be hard on energy prices because, remember, the more you produce of anything, usually the lower prices go. But exports are booming, and if we can produce at lower prices than they can in the rest of the world, that'll be a real kick to the sore spot for OPEC and makes the U.S. Stronger as an energy power. So I am expecting good things from Rick Perry, not so good things from some other people that he's probably going to nominate, but you have to take the bad with the good in that situation.
Well, they mostly seem to be the guys he hung out at the country club with.
Oh, no, there's, let's see, there's Elaine Chao. She's the former Labor Secretary for George W. Bush. She did a miserable job in that. There was a huge mine disaster, which came after they relaxed mining safety standards. And then she went to become a Wall Street lobbyist, and she's married to Mitch McConnell. That is not draining the swamp to put someone like her in there. You know, she's an alligator's alligator. But, you know, but he also has other good people. So again, it's a mix of like, you know, I'm not sure it's people that he hangs out with at the country club, but it's not exactly Lincoln's team of rivals either. So we'll just have to see how the whole thing works out.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after the break.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sean Brodrick. Sean, what's your outlook on gold?
You know, I have to say the action in gold's been pretty darn good lately, which came even though the big institutional funds sold off gold in the big gold ETFs like nobody's business in December. They sold it hand over fist. And yet gold didn't make a new low. That's the kind of thing you look for when you're looking for a market bottom. I'll also remind you that last January when gold broke out, and it really broke out in like February. It moved higher in January, but the breakout came in February. That came at a time everybody was just, you know, so bearish on gold. They hated it and all that stuff. Maybe this is the new seasonal thing. Now, it isn't the regular seasonal stuff we're used to, but markets do change. I don't know, but I feel a lot better about gold than I have in some time. Certainly in December when I was actually feeling quite terrible about it, and I got stopped out of a bunch of positions. Now I think, you know, things look cheap, things look good. So I think we can look at some things here. There is a lot going on, and again, investor demand really dictates the price of gold in the U.S. And so we saw investors rush out in December. What will they do in January and February? That's important. Two physical things, and I touched on one of these just a little bit, which is that the Chinese seem to want to slow down the amount of gold that's being imported into the country, and so that could weigh on demand. And also in India, their leader, who is a man named Modi, he seems to be running some kind of economic experiment with India right now, and I wouldn't want to be living in the petri dish that is India when the big cheese comes along and he outlaws large denomination bills. Now, they're doing this to crack down on corruption, but many people in India don't have bank accounts. So you can imagine the absolute chaos. There have been suicides because of this, many suicides, because people did not know about this, or they didn't get to the bank in time, and the lines of the banks were insane. So they couldn't change their money. And it's also weighing on gold demand because, you know, people have these large bills tucked under the floorboards at home, and they go and convert it to gold. Well, That's not going to happen. They also say that that it was being turned into gold as like part of the corruption thing. Maybe a small part. Let's face it. This is really hitting the farmers in India who don't have bank accounts and keep their money in large bills. And now what are they going to do? So this could really weigh on Indian gold demand this year. I hope this economic experiment ends sooner rather than later. I think it's a terrible idea. And I also worry about the anti-cash movement spreading to other parts of the world, where they suddenly say, oh, here in the U.S., for example, they say, okay, no more $100 bills. Nope, sorry. You have 2 days to go to the bank and convert all your $100 bills, and this includes ones which you may have tucked away and you can't actually remember and stuff like that. 2 days, that's it. Can you imagine that chaos? I worry about that happening here because what governments tend to want to do is they tend to want to control everything. And there's no more control over a person's life than being in control of their pocketbook. And that's what they're doing in India right now. I think it's terrible. And I don't know what they're going to do, how this actually works out. And I should say, despite my bitching about it, and despite the fact that, like, many people in India are really upset about it, he has a large political power base. And so that's probably not going to go away. Could it happen here in the U.S.? Maybe not soon, but that's the kind of thing that could happen. And I would hate to see it happen. So that actually kind of worries me.
Well, in India, for the last 10,000 years, a family kept their wealth on the wife's body in the form of jewelry. And basically
exactly.
What they're doing is they're outlawing a 5,000-year-old tradition.
Well, yeah, that and the fact that people didn't have bank accounts. So they kept large bills actually literally buried under the floorboards. And, yeah, maybe mice would get to them, maybe they wouldn't. There is the potential for loss there, but this was really a boot in the face to the rural population of, like, India that isn't living in the city, doesn't have an ATM down the block, couldn't do this big changeover. It's just awful, awful. And it will weigh on gold demand this year. So while I'm more bullish on gold right now than I certainly was last month, it is facing some more obstacles, some more roadblocks. We're having problems in India. We're having the official slowdown of imports in China. These are issues that gold is going to have to deal with. And the biggest thing it has to deal with is when does institutional selling of the big gold ETFs end. When that ends, you'll see the next bull market begin. But at least with the latest data we have, it didn't end last month. So we'll have to see when that actually ends. But on the other hand, on the bullish hand, I would say the price action in gold has been very good recently, even in the face of a stronger dollar, even in the face of big selling in these ETFs, in the face of many things. The price of gold has held up extraordinarily well. And that, to me, looks like a bottom. We'll just have to see.
With a war on cash, could you see even more demand for electronic currencies like Bitcoin?
I think that's one of the things driving Bitcoin is, I really do. And there are multiple electronic currencies. The problem is electronic currencies can be stolen. We saw a huge heist of that last year. And of course, people who favor electronic currencies say, that's only happening if you're extremely careless. The people running the exchange didn't know what they were doing. Yes, I realize that very careful people probably will not have this problem. But for me, nothing really beats physical gold and silver. I like having a store of that. It works for me. And I'm still positive on most of the silver I bought, and I'm certainly positive on the gold I bought. So I'm not actually worried about the drawdown there. And I know gold isn't going to zero. I know silver isn't going to zero. Electronic currencies, I can see why they're getting more popular if there is a war on cash. But on the other hand, they're just so volatile. My God, the way they go up and down. How do you sleep at night owning those things? I'm sure some people sleep well, but they aren't me. I know what I'm comfortable with, and I'm comfortable with physical gold and silver.
Sean, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. And please go to Energy Resources. Excuse me. And please go to EnergyResourcesDigest.com. Check out what we have there. I have a bunch of stories that went up over the Christmas break that seem to be really getting some good reaction. There's a lot we haven't talked about, things like copper and stuff like that is just so exciting right now. And I think it's a good time to be in the market. Thanks very much.
My guest has been Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Questions for the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.